You're listening to the Escape into Gaming podcast with your host, Nathan, aka Kilnieth. Join us as we explore escapism into the various weird and wonderful worlds of video games. Whether it's something immersive and first person, or something deep and strategic, we will be escaping boredom, stress, pain, and pressure with dragons, racing, space, and sneaking. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Escape into Gaming podcast, where we explore and deep dive into escapism within video games. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the Forgotten Realms with Neverwinter Nights. Released in 2002, Neverwinter Nights is a classic RPG, or otherwise known as a CRPG game, developed by a pre-EA Bioware. Yes, the same Bioware that would later go on to develop Dragon Age and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. It's also the team that had earlier developed the original Baldur's Gate games, a name that's probably way more familiar to people now than it was previously with the release of Baldur's Gate 3. But it's hard to describe Neverwinter Nights as just being a game, as the whole kind of idea behind the development of the game engine, called the Aurora engine, was to create a tool set that allows players to create massively multiplayer worlds and games. Anyone who bought the game would receive the Aurora toolkit along with the game itself, providing them with an entire suite of tools to create their own worlds, maps, adventures and stories, all of which supported both single-player and multiplayer game modes, which has created a bit of a legacy, really, of ongoing content that still persists to this day. The Aurora engine itself would also go on to have a bit of a storied legacy. An updated version of the engine would be used by Obsidian Entertainment, yes, that Obsidian, to make the sequel, Neverwinter Nights 2, and a modified version of the engine would be used by a small Polish studio called CD Projekt Red to create the first Witcher game. Bioware themselves would continue to update and evolve the engine for their works going forward, with titles like Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, and the original Dragon Age Origins, all kind of tracing their legacy back to Neverwinter Nights before Bioware would eventually switch to the Unreal Engine for the Mass Effect games. They weren't just developing a toolkit, however, as Neverwinter Nights came with a campaign showcasing the kind of pedigree of BioWare's storytelling and gameplay design. Like BioWare's previous titles, the gameplay revolves around a real-time with pause implementation of the Dungeons & Dragons rules, specifically I believe the 3rd edition rule set, which gives it a really solid and satisfying role-playing experience, all based around digital dice rolls that happen in the background. I was rather late to my experience with Neverwinter Nights, having purchased it on Steam in 2018, which simultaneously feels both like not too long ago and forever ago. Though I can't honestly remember if I might have bought the original version earlier than that or not. It's kind of like my memories of Neverwinter Nights have blended together into a confusing mix of things that have changed throughout the years, from the enhanced edition, the original edition, whether water shimmied and all kinds of stuff, where I'm like, oh, as if it's got that now. But the version that's currently available on Steam is what's called the enhanced edition, which was developed by Beamdog, a team comprising of many ex-BioWare staff members who would later go on to create earlier go on to create enhanced editions of a lot of the older BioWare titles, like the enhanced Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 games. Originally, I remember buying the game just because it kind of looked somewhat similar to Morrowind, and if you've listened to this podcast, you know how much I love that game. It's another one of those early 3D games featuring like sharp polygons, but at the same time really clear and detailed textures. Being another game that's very visually clear, like you can see and identify everything at a glance, and it very much looks like a video game. And as someone who's never had the opportunity to play Dungeons & Dragons in real life, Neverwinter Nights was a bit of a gateway into the world of D&D for me, and little did I know that it had quickly turned into one of my favourite games. But before I ramble on about stories and experiences, let's start at the very beginning with our first character. You'll start your first experience in the game by creating a character, and by God, what the game lacks in visual customization, it makes up for in role-playing customization. Being based on the Dungeons & Dragons systems, it's not like many other RPGs where you can simply go, fighter, ranger or mage. Instead, there's a variety of interesting and unique classes and subclasses that your character can specialise in. And within these, a plethora of skills to really make your hero your own. Firstly, you'll pick your gender and race, and the race you choose can have a variety of gameplay benefits or detriments, with certain races being more beneficial towards different classes than others. Each race also comes with unique special abilities, so dwarves, for example, are a sturdy race, gaining a bonus to their constitution, but they do suffer a detriment to their charisma, whilst also having dark vision, owing to their often subterranean lifestyles. Elves, on the other hand, are far more dexterous, but physically weaker than humans or dwarves, and come with an innate immunity to spells and effects that cause sleep. You've also got the option to pick some half races too, with partial benefits and detriments from their full counterparts. Once you've picked your race and you pick a portrait to represent yourself, you'll then be presented with the list of classes available to you, from weapon-wielding barbarians, fighters and paladins, to the more magically focused sorcerer and wizard, and quite literally everything in between. You've got rogues, rangers, bards, monks and clerics. These base classes have something for absolutely every type of player, and quite drastically affect the way that the game is played. The more martial classes are great at charging straight into the fray and cutting a swath through their enemies, whereas the less physically inclined will probably want to remain at a distance and rely on others as a distraction as they hurl magic or use ranged weapons against their foes. Some classes even come with abilities to actually summon a familiar or a pet to journey with you, and there is a ton of pets. You've got a huge range to choose from tigers and stuff like that. You've got a cute fairy dragon, and you've got fearsome dire wolves, and the rather hilarious dire badger. You'll also likely be able to start to see how the range of classes is similar to something like an MMO. With it, many RPG games have been inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So one of the greatest things about Neverwinter Nights is because it was designed for multiplayer, you can play through the entire game as a single-player RPG, or bring along a party of friends of varying classes for a kind of true Dungeons and Dragons experience. So with your class selected, we move on to choosing your character's alignment, because it is a D&D game after all. So whether you're a chaotic neutral chaos bringer, or a lawful good noble sort, or perhaps an underhanded evil being, there's plenty of role-playing opportunities for you, with some campaigns actually offering more options for various different types of character. You really do have the choice to play the game how you want to play. Next up, we've got your character's attributes, and if you're anything like I was playing it for the first time, you'll have little to no clue about how these are going to affect the game. And handily, the game does have a warning on the side telling you of this. You can quite literally make a character that is going to have a very hard time if you don't know what you're doing. But thankfully, the game does have a recommended button that'll automatically distribute points towards a sensible spread of skills for your race and class, so you really can't go wrong with that option unless you're trying to absolutely min-max. We've also got the confusingly named Packages button, which I never really understood it when I first played, probably because I skipped over reading a lot of the helpful information on the sidebar. But yeah, the packages are basically like pre-configured. It pre-configures your character towards certain types within your character's class. So if you take a druid, for example, the default druid has a variety of abilities available to them, and you'll have access to the full suite of options as your character levels up and improves. However, if you choose the druid shifter, the game will prioritise skills that allow your character to shapeshift to a variety of powerful different forms. Meanwhile, the Druid Hawkmaster is an agile dexterous build with command over creatures and a permanent hawk companion. Once again, this screen gives us a recommended button, so if you're just wanting to get into the game quickly, or you don't know what each of the skills do, it's a great way to have a viable build from the get-go. Finally, you can also customise the 3D model for your character, picking from a variety of different heads, colours, tattoos and the base clothing, before you set off on your first adventure, which in the core campaign and original release of the game was the Wailing Death campaign.
The Frozen North, the name given to the stark and unforgiving frontier that lies beyond the high moor of Faerun. A bleak wilderness where barbarian clans and tribes of giants roam the land and fierce dragons rule the skies. But amidst the frozen savagery stands a bastion of civilization, the city of Neverwinter, Jewel of the North. Behind the city's high walls, those both hardy and brave carve out an existence from this bleak land under the guidance and protection of the legendary hero, Lord Nasher Alagonda. Yet there are some things that all the courage in the world cannot stand against. A virulent plague swept the city, a terrible affliction that began in the beggar's nest. Soon, all of Neverwinter would feel the touch of the Wailing Death. The disease could not be cured. Panic ensued. The streets erupted into violence. The Jewel of the North was brought to its knees. To save Neverwinter, Lady Aribeth de Tilmarand, Paladin of Tyr, and Lord Nasher's right hand put forth the call for a champion. A rush of would-be heroes answered her call, some drawn by promises of grandeur and glory, others by the lure of gold. Those with the greatest potential were initiated into the academy to train and study under the greatest minds of Neverwinter, all in the hopes a champion might emerge to save the city from the Wailing Death, and whatever sinister force might be behind it.
The original core campaign that shipped alongside the Neverwinter Nights is called The Wailing Death, and it tells the story of a plague sweeping through the titular city of Neverwinter. You and a bunch of other heroes have all been recruited by Lady Aribeth to assist the city in its search for a cure to the plague, and you've been training at the academy to sharpen your skills for the trials ahead. You start off in the dorms, and this area will kind of teach you the basic controls for the game, whether you're the type of player that prefers a traditional mouse-driven classic RPG similar to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, where you click where you want to move, or whether you prefer tank controls with WASD to turn your character around and move backwards and forwards. There's a variety of control methods to suit your preference, and the nearby BIM will guide you through each of them and all the different camera modes as well, whether it's top-down camera or a camera that follows you. Additionally, the console releases of Neverwinter Nights also have full controller support, though unfortunately the PC and mobile versions still lack this, but I'll come on to the various versions later on. Once you've become comfortable with the controls, you'll be directed into the next room where you can speak to Olgerd, the Quartermaster, who will guide you through a quick shop tutorial, and you can also take this opportunity to get some cheap, kind of better armour or maybe a weapon or supplies for your class. And the rest of this initial tutorial area is really interesting though, because depending on the class that you chose, you'll be directed to different people to learn the kind of tricks of the trade, as it were. Every class has the opportunity to learn how to do melee combat, and through this you'll probably discover the right-click menu, a system that reminds me a lot of The Sims, to be honest. When you right-click, you get this radial menu that spawns out of wherever you've clicked, with a huge selection of sub-menus organised into categories like your list of spells, any special abilities you have, and the option to simply attack a target. You've also got the option to examine things as well, which is how you can read books or see the stats on various pieces of equipment. And alongside the right-click menu, you've also got a variety of hotbars along the bottom of the screen that you can swap between using the shift and control buttons, giving you a shed load of slots. Right-clicking on these allows you to set up convenient hotkeys for your character's abilities, and you can also drag inventory items like potions into these slots for quick access. The melee instructor will either tell you to train with some of the other instructors in the initial room, doing a quick melee combat tutorial with the melee guy and ranged combat with the other guy, or he'll basically say, you're not a melee type, go and find the trainer for your class. But you can actually go to every single one of the trainers and kind of get a feel for how each of the classes' spells, how each of the classes play and how their abilities are done. So you can learn how to cast spells, heal others, find traps and lockpick containers, depending on what your character's skilled in. But once your final training is completed, you'll be instructed to meet with Lady Arabeth to receive your blessing and get ready for adventure.
Congratulations! Your training here at the Academy is now complete. May the blessing of Tyr be upon you. I have been looking forward to meeting you. The instructors here at the Academy speak very highly of your skills. I am Lady Arabeth de Tilmarand. Perhaps after the graduation ceremonies we can speak in private. Neverwinter can use someone like you. We should arrange to... Wait! What was that? Did you feel it? Brace yourself, we are under attack!
Just as you get ready to receive your blessing, unknown mages will teleport into the room and begin slaughtering everyone. This is your first taste of real combat and your first hint as to the direction that this campaign's story is going to go. Surprisingly, most of the NPCs in this room can actually die, leaving you and Lady Arabeth to fend off the attackers, which can actually be quite overwhelming as a new player, and especially with certain classes. Once you do overcome this, however, Arabeth gives you a key so that you can head further into the Academy and attempt to protect what are called the Water Davian creatures. These are 4 creatures that have been collected to hopefully be used to provide a cure for the plague that the city is suffering from. Arabeth explains that she cannot come with you because she fears the invaders might have centred their teleportation on her, so you're the one entrusted to seek out and defend the creatures further into the Academy. Upon leaving the room, you'll meet another mysterious mage who was expecting Lady Arabeth, not some wet behind the ear adventurer. He'll teleport away in typical evil villain fashion, leaving you with some goblins to defeat, which shouldn't really be a challenge for any character really. We're now back in the main rooms of the Academy now, but the atmosphere has completely changed. Corpses line the rooms and corridors of this previously safe environment, and bands of goblins are roaming around. Neverwinter Nights revels in positional audio, playing a variety of screams, yells and shouts that sound like they're actually in the environment, perpetually, further away than you can reach. These do eventually become a little grating, I find, especially when you hear that stock woman screaming sound effect, which is also used in many other games. But some of the sound effects later on can actually sound genuinely horrific. As soon as we move on to the next area, we're at the real introduction to the game. It's a lower level area filled with more goblins and a few skeletons, and it's here that you can really start to experiment and play around with your abilities in a relatively safe environment. There's a smattering of loot around too, though it's mainly going to be like a couple of coins and the occasional health potion. Like many RPG games, Neverwinter Nights relies on loot tables and RNG to generate the loot that you'll be acquiring through your journey, and it's this is levelled based on your character's level as well. The game can also scale encounters based on your character level and even your party size too, though this does seem to be on a per campaign basis, and from what I can see reading through the wiki and stuff, it seems to mainly happen in this original campaign. We'll meet Pavel once more during our trek through the academy, and he's seeking revenge for the death of his brother Bim, which you can actually find if you go back to that very first room. He'll introduce us to the idea of hiring henchmen once we leave the academy, but for now he's an additional party member that can assist us through this next section. Henchmen in this game work a little differently to your party members from like the earlier Baldur's Gate games. You don't have direct control over them, though you can customise the way that they respond to situations, like whether they'll use melee or ranged weapons, cast their spells, or attempt to heal you and pick locks. And in later campaigns, you can also access their inventory, so they can either carry stuff for you, or you can swap out their armour and gear and stuff like that. But unfortunately, that is a feature from later campaigns that they haven't backported into the original one for some reason. I'm not sure why, but yeah, you're a bit restricted for party members in this initial campaign. The next NPC we'll meet, Geldar, will introduce us to levelling up our character, conveniently giving us enough experience to hit the next level. On levelling up, we're presented once more with the list of character classes, and it's at this point we're given the opportunity to dual class, if we like, which is a rather unique option that allows us to hybridise the strengths and abilities of two classes. It is a bit of a catch-22, however, because each time you put a level in one class, you won't be gaining a level in the other class, so there are some advanced strategies behind this, and you can make some really cool characters, but you'll potentially not be as strong as a pure fighter if you're becoming a fighter mage. But a fighter monk being able to heal themselves is pretty damn cool. Additionally, you do actually start to receive an experience penalty if your two classes aren't within one level of one another. On top of that, you can actually go full-on multi-class. From what I can see on the wiki, originally it allowed up to 3 classes, but it seems to suggest that the Enhanced Edition possibly supports up to 8, depending on the module. I really can't imagine a level 1 mage, fighter, monk, ranger, sorcerer, bard, barbarian, druid would be particularly strong, jack of all trades and all that. Back to levelling, however, the game once again makes this rather convenient for newer players, as you still have the recommended button to guide you through the process towards a viable build if you're not comfortable with the 3rd edition D&D systems. You get to put points into any of your attributes and pick a new perk, which can open up a ton of new opportunities and strategies. If you're a wizard character with a familiar, which might have died at this point, levelling also gives you the opportunity to change your familiar and resummon them, along with learning some new spells. The next section plays out much like the first, with more goblins and skeletons for you to try your new abilities on and get used to having a party member with you. You should probably start feeling a bit more familiar with the general gameplay at this point, and there's plenty of crates and chests for some minor loot on your way to the final room. The final room itself can actually be approached by a couple of different directions, and it can be pretty dangerous. You're going to face your first kind of boss encounter in this room, along with a handful of other enemies, so your approach can really dictate how it's going to play out, whether you're going to lure some of the minor enemies out to pick them off in the corridor or go in guns blazing. Thankfully, the boss is one of those mage assassins, so martial types have a relatively easy task of just waltzing up to him and giving him a good old bonk. But yeah, we finish off this chapter by heading into the stables where the panicked Waterdavian creatures are stressing out about this attack and everything, and they teleport and flee away, lost to the corners of the city of Neverwinter. In here we will meet Fenthic and Destha here, Fenthic being Lady Arabeth's partner, and Destha being the leader of the Hellmite faith.
We came too late. The creatures are lost. The Academy students slain. No! This cannot be! How could this happen?
All is lost, Fenthic. The nymph has fled. The Yonti and the other creatures have escaped into the streets of the city. And where was Arabeth during all this?
Destha is rather critical of Arabeth, not being aware that she's got a good reason for, not being here, because she thought the mages were going to follow her. But he's very quick to cast accusations towards her, which gets Fenthic's back up a little bit. And with this final conversation, we're once again given enough experience points to level up to level 3 before the prologue draws to a close, and we are then moved into Chapter 1.
In one brutal attack, the promise of those at the Academy had been all but snuffed out. Hope disappeared with the Waterdavian creatures, and the weight of the terrible sickness pressed down on the city once more. Even more chilling, the whispered rumors of enemies seeking to destroy Neverwinter from within had proved true, though the identity of those responsible for the slaughter was as yet unknown. Still, a flicker of hope yet remained, for not all had died in the attack. From the bloody carnage at the Academy, a survivor had stepped forward, a champion to carry the torch in this darkest hour.
Chapter 1 of Neverwinter Nights is where the campaign really gets started. We start off in the Temple of Tyr, with Fenthic and Destha still butting heads about the loss of the Waterdavian creatures. Destha is very annoyed at Lady Arabeth, accusing her of incompetence, and seems to be spreading a rhetoric that the Hellmite faith provides protection against the plague. Meanwhile, Fenthic defends Arabeth, but he will also apologise on behalf of Destha for his attitude. The room we actually start off in is kind of worrying, to be honest. The temple is playing the part of a kind of medical ward, with bedrolls scattered around and groaning patients being attended to by a couple of nurses. Speaking to one of these nurses, you get to inquire about more background to the plague and the potential cure, as well as asking them if they're, not worried about becoming infected themselves, where they'll basically highlight that the Hellmites look after plague patients and they seem to be immune to getting affected, so it must be down to the gods, really. Definitely an interesting view of it, to be sure. We turn our attention to the main lobby of the temple, where Lady Arabeth will be waiting to brief us on our tasks going forwards. Following the loss of the Waterdavian creatures, our task is now to head out into the city of Neverwinter and to track them down. We're not given too much guidance here, other than that we should investigate each of the city's districts, the Peninsula, Docks, Black Lake, and the Beggar's Nest, in search of the creatures. We're free to approach this in whatever order we'd like, especially with the base campaign's kind of level scaling going on, so you can likely predict that there's 4 creatures and 4 districts, so each of the districts is going to contain one of the creatures. The game really opens up in terms of progression at this point. The central area you're located in and the various districts themselves offer a range of side quests and stores to buy some new gear and supplies. Arabeth will also once more point us to the Trade of Blades bar, which is known to be a gathering place for various henchmen. Before we even leave the temple, however, we are pestered by Tommy, one potential henchman that we can recruit, who actually specialises in lockpicking and sword fighting. If we press him for some more information, we find that he was in fact previously a prisoner in the peninsula before the warden mysteriously decided to let all of the prisoners go free, a plotline we'll discover more about later. As soon as we do leave the temple, Bethany will rush towards us asking for help. She actually lives in the Peninsula District, and backing up what Tommy just said, the prisoners have been freed and are roaming the streets, killing anyone they can get their hands on, with the residents fleeing for their lives to the city core. I must say, I'm a little bit surprised myself at this point, as on a playthrough, whilst I was writing these notes, I was playing through the game again to make sure I was, it was fresh in my mind. And when I stepped outside the Temple of Tyr, I found that it was daytime outside, which for a game called Neverwinter Nights, I was fairly sure the original version, it was just perpetual darkness all the time, like without a skybox, it was just blackness. I don't know whether this is an update to the enhanced edition, or maybe I did play the old one. This is what I mean when I'm confused about which version I've played or when I've played it. But either way, it did thankfully start getting darker as nighttime approached, so it felt a little bit more familiar. We've got a selection of places to explore in the core district itself, not just the trade of blades, but the various stores as well. And you might find yourself getting lost in these completely disorganised pathways and buildings and streets. Thankfully, a quick tap of the M key presents us with a minimap that conveniently has useful locations already marked on the map for us, so we can easily decide where to go, including showing which direction leads to each of the city's districts. And the map is really cool as well, because it allows us to add our own custom map markers to it, which can be pretty useful in some of the campaigns. It kind of adds to its pen and paper RPG origins. Another thing harkening to this is the fact that in the journal tab itself there is a notes section, so you can keep your own notes in there, which is very convenient. Exploration really is key in this game. There are no quest markers or any modern conveniences like that. Instead, you'll need to go around and talk to people in order to acquire potential side quests or to just find loot. And I really enjoy that about this game and a lot of older games in general, as talking to the various NPCs dotted around the city, you'll learn of various attitudes towards the plague and the situations that are affecting each of the different districts. There's a level of depth that Bioware puts into these games that anyone familiar with like Mass Effect should be immediately familiar with. Most NPCs aren't voice acted in this one, but each of them has a distinct personality, and it just adds so much more believability and immersion into the game world. In terms of the kinds of quests available, there's a delightful mix, from researching ancient tombs and recovering lost artifacts, or rescuing a bunch of trapped animals from a zoo. There's even some options for evil characters as well. Josh Strife Hayes mentioned in his coverage of the game that the fact that the main quest gives you such a vague "find the Waterdavian creatures" objective, it means you can essentially use this to validate any form of role-playing action you decide to pursue, whether you're going to be an entirely noble hero or an evil scoundrel attempting to worsen the city of Neverwinter. The choice really is yours, and it's that player freedom combined with the D&D systems that really make this an incredibly flexible game to escape into. Much like other Bioware titles, when we do decide to engage with the henchmen and followers, we'll discover that even these come with their own plot lines that will develop as you make progress through the main quest and essentially build up your affinity with them. There's a good range of followers to join you in your adventures, from the nervous and clumsy healer Linu to the brash dwarven warrior Grax. You'll surely be able to find a henchman that not only covers any potential class weaknesses that you have and balance the party better, but also one that meshes with your character's personality. And as you adventure with them, you'll discover more about their backgrounds and character stories, and there are a variety of items you'll collect dotted around the campaign that'll progress their story, and they can even lead to upgrades to items that they've actually gifted you as well. Once we've geared up and possibly acquired a henchman, it's time to get started on our quest and rescue the Waterdavian creatures. You can pick any of the 4 districts to get started in, although personally I've pretty much always started with the peninsula, seeing as that seems to be where the game kind of pushes you towards at the beginning. The Peninsula District, as the name implies, is a peninsula surrounded on most sides by water, and as we enter the area, the captain of the guard will call us over before we continue in. He'll give us a bit more information about the escaped prisoners, and we can really tell this district has gone to hell. Groups of prisoners will approach the barricade by the gate and attempt to break through, though they are fairly weak and you alongside the guard should be able to easily deal with them. If we investigate some nearby houses, we'll find that there are groups of prisoners hiding out in these as well, and they're immediately hostile once they spot us. This is the part of the game where we will start to see real combat, as for the majority of the encounters in the game, we're probably going to be going up against small groups of enemies rather than one-on-one situations, and managing these groups is kind of crucial to your survival. Martial types have the defense to be able to tank hits and stand their ground, and if you've got the cleave skill, it is hugely beneficial, as in that skill, when you defeat one enemy, it means you get a free attack on another enemy close by, so you can go bonk bonk. There's also a mechanic called an attack of opportunity, where if an enemy is distracted, either by running towards or away from you, or if they're casting a spell or readying a ranged weapon, you'll also get another free attack on them. This does happen for the player as well, however, so anyone who is magically inclined and wants to cast spells, you've got the potential of being interrupted there. A good tactic for those types is to potentially keep some spells on you that slow down or paralyze groups of enemies. Rangers, on the other hand, will likely have a hard time if you don't have a summon or a henchman to distract the enemies, at least in my experience. Neverwinter Nights combat feels really solid. It's not like Skyrim where swords go swish swish and hammers also go swish swish. Everything actually feels physical and connected and like it's got weight behind it. There's some kind of animation matching system in the game where, depending on the dice rolls you and your enemies make, it'll actually match up a pair of animations that represent the situation. Your character might swing their weapon but miss, at which point it will look like the enemy has ducked out of the way or perhaps blocked their attack with their shield or weapon. Similarly, when firing ranged weapons, missed shots will go wide, but critical hits might cause an arrow to land squarely in the enemy's forehead. It's a very satisfying system that's kind of visually representing what's happening with all the dice rolls in the background, and your character will normally seamlessly switch targets once one enemy has been defeated, squaring up against the next target and beginning combat rolls against them. As we explore further, we'll likely meet Miss Dulcimer, who worked at a place called the Tanglewood Estate, and she'll let the player know that Lady Tanglewood was secretly meeting with the head guard of the prison via an underground connection beneath the estate, which gives us one potential entryway into the prison. And as you play the game, you'll probably find that most districts of the city have multiple approaches and ways to achieve your goals. Some objectives themselves even give you multiple ways of solving them to suit your character's alignment, allowing you to really lean into the role-playing aspect of your particular character. Once we enter the prison, we'll have to carefully manage our approaches through various rooms and corridors to ensure we're not biting off more than we can chew. But there are plenty of combat encounters to get stuck in with. Each floor kind of challenges you with a mini-boss character at the end of it. And at the lowest level of the prison, we will encounter the final boss of this area, the head jailer himself. And as it turns out, the reason that he's seemingly gone insane and let all of the prisoners loose is because he's being controlled by an intellect devourer. This is one of the water Davian creatures that we've been sent to recover. The boss fight itself is rather interesting because if we defeat the jailer, the Devourer will actually spring free and head towards another nearby guard and end up controlling them, leading to you needing to defeat multiple guards before you can finally actually kill the Devourer itself. If you have a high enough persuasion skill, however, you can actually go to the other guards in advance to try and get them to snap out of its control and flee, reducing the amount of hosts that the Devourer can control. And an evil character might even just decide to kill the other guards in advance. But yes, this is our first major boss fight, and you will recover your first Water Davian creature. At this point, we should probably talk about the game's pacing. One criticism that the Wailing Death campaign often comes under is that it starts to become fairly repetitive. Once Chapter 1 concludes and we've got all of the Water Davian creatures and finished off the, spoiler alert, things that happen at the end, we move into the next chapter and we begin in a safe area with shops, henchmen, and an NPC that runs up to you saying that you should head in that particular direction. And there's 3 or 4 different directions to go to for the main quest, and each direction, an area, has its own side quests. It's the exact same formula as we've just experienced in the first chapter of the game, albeit with a complete change of scenery, as we're no longer in the city of Neverwinter and are instead closer to the city of Luskan and the surrounding woodlands and caves. If you're enjoying the gameplay and systems, then it is a nice change of scenery for your continued adventure, but Chapter 2 in particular is a lot longer than Chapter 1 and does feel a heck of a lot like more of the same. There are, however, a lot of interesting side areas as you explore, often containing their own plot lines, such as a village that has been suspended in time, with you becoming a bit of a investigator and judge for a crime that was committed thousands of years ago. Or later on, there's even an area where a researcher has discovered a way to actually travel 10,000 years into the past, and she wants you to plant a tree so that she can research it in the future. These side quests are really refreshing against the potential mundanity of go to X number of locations and recover Y items. The plot does start to become pretty interesting, however. Even in Chapter 1, you'll find some seemingly mad people spouting some nonsense about the ancient creators or some such. And this will turn out to actually be true and link directly into the cause of the plague itself, and a deeper threat that not only could potentially destroy the city of Neverwinter, but perhaps change the very face of Faerun itself. Neverwinter Nights was a product of the time where games often later received sizable expansion packs, along with a plethora of smaller experiences called premium modules. Each of these are standalone adventures. Some continue plotlines from others, such as Shadows of Odrentide leading into Hordes of the Underdark. And these later campaigns are often considered far superior to the Wailing Death campaign. They usually say that you should start the campaign with a brand new character, so there's actually no harm in skipping over the Wailing Death in its entirety if you don't enjoy the story or the way the game's paced. One really cool thing that I've always quite enjoyed about Neverwinter Nights is that you can, if you wish, export your character from one campaign, complete with their levels, skills, and I'm pretty sure their inventory as well, and then you can import these into a new campaign. You'll probably be drastically overpowered, but the option is still there. The Enhanced Edition that's available for purchase comes with all of the campaigns that the original received included, along with the premium modules from around that time. The PC version of the game even comes with the Infinite Dungeons premium module, which randomly generates an endless dungeon for you to adventure through. Since the release of the Enhanced Edition, the game has also received newer campaigns too, one of which actually continues the story of the original hero's journey after becoming the hero of Neverwinter, so there is definitely no shortage of content if you do find yourself enjoying the game and its systems. Before we close out this section of the episode, I do want to highlight some rather interesting features that Neverwinter Nights contains. For one, some modules support the ability for the player to actually ride horses and even partake in mounted combat. Paladins can also unlock an ability to summon their trusty seed, giving you a brand new movement method. For those people who also like designing their characters and customising the way that they look, the game also has functionality to customise both your weapons and your armour, so you can swap through various hilts and blades or different chest pieces, different shoulders, legs, all that kind of stuff. And these systems mainly lean into the role-playing aspect of the game, but they're very nice touches to have. No discussion about Neverwinter Nights would be complete without mentioning the game's multiplayer functionality. Firstly, any campaign can be played multiplayer with your friends, and on setting up a new multiplayer game, there's a whole host of options you configure, like the name of the server and the password, etc., including the maximum player limit up to 255 players. Though I wouldn't recommend doing this on your own computer, it's more useful for a dedicated server, that option. While some campaigns aren't specifically designed for multiplayer, it does improve the experience of every campaign in my opinion. Due to the way that loot is rolled, you're often going to find really interesting gear that might be completely unusable for your particular character class, but if you bring a friend along who's a different class, suddenly you start appreciating all of the loot you find a whole bunch more. Additionally, I would say that Dungeons & Dragons has always kind of thrived on being a party-based kind of game, so having an actual party of players, you can kind of strategize and discuss your approaches, which is hugely beneficial. Plus, who doesn't like some jolly cooperation? Neverwinter Nights also comes with what's called the Dungeon Masters client, and if you know D&D, you're probably already smiling at the potential of what this could hold. This client allows a dedicated dungeon master to connect into the game and have essentially a godlike level of control over the entire world. You can teleport to anywhere in the entire campaign, and you can spawn in any and all items, monsters, or NPCs. Taking this one step further, you can even directly take control of every single creature, walking around as them, attacking, or anything you type out is going to be spoken through the voice of the creature as well. So it allows a dungeon master to customise the adventure that the players will have, much like a dungeon master in the tabletop campaigns. Heck, you could even take it one step further, and you could have your players roll dice in real life to dictate what things might happen later on in the adventure. For those who want to take their adventures even further, you also have access to the toolkit, which allows you to build completely bespoke layouts and maps for your adventurers to play through. You've got access to all of the pieces that we used to make up the original campaigns, and you can snap these together to create custom maps and populate them with decorations, NPCs, and of course monsters and loot. This is why it can sometimes be hard to describe just exactly what Neverwinter Nights actually is, as it's so much more than just being a game or the campaigns that come with it. It's a complete Dungeons & Dragons toolkit for creators and players, just as much as it is a game for the players as well. Taking this to the absolute extremes, since the original release of Neverwinter Nights and all the way through to this enhanced edition now, Neverwinter Nights has been kind of best known for its persistent worlds. And these are player-made and ran servers that essentially operate as entire MMOs using the Neverwinter Nights systems and tools. And damn, is it a heck of a rabbit hole you can dive down. Just by clicking on the server browser in the game itself, you'll see a huge list of online servers that are still well populated to this day. You've got traditional EXP grindy MMO experiences to complete role-playing servers where acting in character is mandatory. I myself spent a good few months being completely absorbed into the world of Aralith, which takes place on a landmass away from the regular landmass of Faerun. I think it was to the north in the ocean. And it's got its own stories, lore and adventures to be had. There are quest givers who will lead you to various dungeons and the accompanying loot, but the core drive of this experience is really the roleplay opportunities. You start off on one of these servers by creating a backstory for your character, and creating the character themselves. So in my instance, I of course created Kilniath Endoka, a farmer boy from Nashkel whose family had been held to ransom by bandits seeking an ongoing series of payments to ensure their well-being. These bandits were connected to the local mayor and guards, so seeing no other option than to start earning some decent money, Kilniath left the farm life behind to seek adventure in the lands of Aralith. Arriving on the Newbie Island, which I will admit I forgot the name of what the island was called, but there is a dedicated smaller island for newer players. I remember trying to get my bearings and introducing myself to a couple of the other players there. We formed a bit of a party and undertook our first adventures clearing a Tomb of the Undead. And it was such an engrossing experience, essentially living the life of my character in this server, and it entirely encompasses the whole kind of thing of escaping into games. Eventually, through a server glitch, I actually logged in one day to find my character had accidentally spawned on the mainland. So many of the friends and connections I'd made on the Newbie Island were cut off to me, since there's actually no way to get back to the Newbie Island. Disheartened, Kilniath spent a while frequenting the local tavern to drown his sorrows, until a kindly halfling approached and asked me what was up. She would actually help me get my bearings in the mainland itself and make a bit of money so that I was able to rent out a small apartment for myself. And eventually I would get back on my feet, even heading to another town and finding one of my friends from the Newbie Island who'd actually also headed to the mainland as well. And it's this level of emergent gameplay and player-driven situations that drives RP communities like this. And the toolset provided by Neverwinter Nights really makes pretty much anything possible. It's a game, but it's also a toolset, and it is also a community. And each one of these make it an experience worth escaping into. Before we finish off this episode, I do want to briefly go over the different versions of the game that are available. On the PC, you can still purchase the original Diamond edition of the game from GOG or GOG.com, though your mileage is probably going to vary with that in terms of how it wants to run on modern systems. And that is one of the benefits to buying the enhanced version of the game, because it tends to run pretty well on newer operating systems and such. The enhanced edition itself was also released for Android and iOS, meaning you can take the experience on the go with you with fairly competent touch controls, though the UI itself is way better suited to tablets than it is for phones. With a bit of fiddling around, it is also possible to copy your saves to and from the mobile and PC version of the game as well, so good way of taking an existing save on the go if you're going to be, travelling for a while or something. The game has also been released for modern consoles with an Xbox One and PS4 version, which also work on the Xbox Series and PS5, as well as being released on the Nintendo Switch. These come complete with controller support, which unfortunately is still missing from the PC release, though the game was understandably not designed for a controller, so some things on the console version can be a bit finicky to interact with, like targeting, for example. I've played the PS4 version myself, although I do have to say that running that version on a PS5, it nearly constantly crashes, like every 5 seconds or so. You can barely... It was completely unplayable for me, so not sure what's happening there. Your mileage is really going to vary with the console version, I think. The Switch version ran perfectly fine, but it does come with some visual drawbacks, what with it being a portable console after all. Interestingly, one of the kind of highlights that they had on the marketing for the Switch version specifically was that whilst the console versions don't have crossplay support, they did, however, allow the Switch version to connect to Aralith, the persistent world role-playing server I mentioned earlier, which isn't available on the other console versions, weirdly. It's like specific to the Switch version, although I do think the mobile versions are crossplay compatible. But yeah, personally, I would say your best bet is probably to stick with the PC version, or mobile if you don't have a PC. They are definitely the most fleshed out versions, with all of the additional content and campaigns available, plus the ability to connect to other servers for multiplayer. With it being such an old game, it tends to run well on pretty much every kind of PC out there, and yes, it even works on Linux too. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really hope you've enjoyed listening. Have you played any Dungeons & Dragons games yourselves? Where did your adventures take you? Please do let me know in the comments on YouTube, Discord, or on Patreon. And if you do enjoy these episodes, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon for early access to upcoming episodes and exclusive posts. Your support helps me keep the podcast ad-free, and it pays for the distribution costs to the various podcasting platforms. There are many Dungeons & Dragons games out there, but I don't think any of them are quite like Neverwinter Nights. So consider picking it up in a sale, and do give us a shout in Discord if you're looking for another party member. As always, I hope you have yourself a cracking weekend, regardless of what adventures you find yourself escaping into. And I do hope that you will join us next time for another episode of the Escape into Gaming podcast.